Hello and welcome everyone to this week's Coffee, Kegs, and Kriegsspiel podcast. It is your temporary host once again, James. Um, this week we're going to cover the topic of best practices of Discord when running a Kriegsspiel game. Um, so apparently, this is before my time, but during the time of COVID, when the Southern California Society had to go online and became the International Kriegsspiel Society. They searched for a way to do it online, and I think they pretty quickly settled on Discord as a good way to do it. Discord was new to me as well when I joined the International Kriegsspiel Society. I had been playing a form of Kriegsspiel, and I was just using Google Drawings, which is very different. And I soon came to see the light and the advantages of using Discord and have used it ever since. And in my early games, I did not use Discord very well, and I've learned a lot since then, and so I want to share what I have learned. I think a lot of umpires now quickly learn, they see what's being done on other games and quickly copy it. And use those similar practices. And so a lot of the games now are very well organized, and we're kind of all doing similar things, but it hasn't always been that way. And sometimes there's new umpires that haven't incorporated everything yet, and there's things that can be learned. So this is more geared towards umpires that are new, but it can be applicable for everyone, and there may be things in there that you learn. If anyone has any thoughts or questions, I guess raise your hand, and I think I can promote you so you can talk and we can hear you. So, let me share. Sorry, I gotta go to a past game of mine to share an example of how to organize. Okay, we can do this one. This one ended. Um, so when you set up a new Discord server, when it very first starts, there's I forget, it's not even says general. It says text channel, a text category, and a text channel or general channel, and then a voice channel and a voice category. Usually what I do is I delete the voice channel unless I'm going to use it if it's for like a live game, but I delete that because we're not going to use it for play by post. And then I turn the arrivals channel, or I turn the first text channel into, I call it arrivals. And I guess if you're completely unfamiliar with Discord, I'll go over how to do that. So you right click here, go to edit channel, and in the overview you can change the name. And then usually for the arrivals, I change the slow mode here to 6 hours so that the conversations aren't there. People can still talk, but you're not going to have a big conversation. That way it's easy to go back and see who's come recently. And then I create a new text channel that I always call a general discussion. So if you're creating a channel, you just hit the plus here, you give it a name. You can say whether it's text or voice, and then just say whether it's private or not. Before I do any of that, really, I set up the roles. So once you have a new server, it's named, and you go to the server settings. You can give it a cool picture that's hopefully easy to recognize. And then you want to set up roles initially, because roles make everything a whole lot easier. So I always have because I'm almost never the only umpire, so I have an umpire role, so everyone who's an umpire has all the permissions they need. A spectator role, so it's easy to add spectators to watch the channels. And then usually, it kind of varies, but various roles within the team. But once you have a role, it's very easy to assign people that role, and then it automatically syncs their permissions to all the various channels. So it's a good way to organize. So I set up the roles first. That way, as I'm creating the channels, I can I could just assign the roles there, and then it's automatic. So the typical kind of channels I usually have a general category. I have a general discussion channel, just for people to talk about whatever. I have a channel where people can request what team they want to be on or position. I have a channel that lists who is assigned what team, and it's pinged so that it's highlighted for them what they're on. And I keep that updated as it changes throughout the game. And I make sure, this is an important thing, in terms of permissions, this one's public, but I made it so that everyone that's in it, they can see everything, but they can't send messages. So I hit the X here for send messages, and that means they can't start typing in that channel if I don't want them to, and that's important to keep it clean. In this case, I had a new player guide, so some instructions and information that's easily referenced. I've seen channels where umpires are posting instructions for players, but then it's in the same channel that people are asking questions. And so if you want to like read the rules of the game or instructions, you have to like go through all this text. And it's not very organized and it's a pain. So it's better to, if as an umpire you want all your instructions easily organized and findable for the players and reference, so that they can say, okay, if I want to write a dispatch, this is the this is the format that the dispatch could be. Or if I want to know, I don't know, what's the briefing or the rules or other things, it's easily findable for them. I have a channel for deadlines. This is important. So it's dedicated to deadlines. Nobody else can write into it. And every time I have a deadline, I just post the whatever time that the orders are for, and then I use hammer time to make it so everyone can see it within their time zone. And hammer time's really easy. If you just Google hammer time, at least it comes up quickly for me, but hammertime.cyon/en comes up with this page. All you do is click here and pick whatever date and time you want it to be. So let's say the 26th at 7 p.m. And then it has all these different formats. I usually almost always do this one. You just hit copy to clipboard, and then you paste that into Discord. And I usually do this one and this one, so it tells the date, and then it has a countdown timer, which is handy for me. So I always use that for deadlines. And one thing that I do that I think is the best practice is the day of that the deadlines due, I usually post a reminder about every 4 hours, starting like 12 hours in advance, just to remind the players that the deadlines are due so they don't forget. It's helpful. I find it helpful as a player, and I think it's helpful to make sure that players remember to keep up with their deadlines. That's one of the complaints of an umpire is when players miss their deadlines. It's no fun for everyone involved. So the more that the umpire can do to remind the players, the better. I'm going to pause for a second and see if anyone's raising their hand, because I'm not looking at that. Doesn't look like it. Okay, going back. So deadline channel, an announcement channel, which I don't always have, but sometimes there's things you could use deadlines for this, but sometimes there's things you want to announce that you want separate as well. That's different between like a guide or deadline, so I have a channel for that. And then when the game ends, I create an after party channel just for people to talk about the game. It's something I do. The umpire category can vary, because a lot of my games I do it with other umpires, and so we have to have a channel where we can talk, a channel where we're sharing things with each other, a channel where we're sharing the modules with each other, where we're scheduling our time, who's doing what. This one's important, and a spectator channel, so whoever's spectating, you want to give them a place where they can talk. And the other thing that's important is a AAR channel. I think this is a good practice, is you want a channel that you are keeping up to date with all your reports. This is for play-by-post specifically, because it's really hard. If you wait till the end of the game to try and do it, it's really hard to remember everything that happened. It's also a place you can let your spectators see it, but not talk in here, but see it. And it's an easy way for them to keep track of what's going on in the game, because they get this nice overview, usually an overview screenshot with the umpire giving a description of what happened in that turn. And then at the end of the game, I mean, this can be your AR. You don't even have to do anything with it, or you can at least use it as references if you create a Google Doc or a YouTube video or something, a more, I don't know, specific AAR. It's helpful to have. So best practice is have an AAR channel where you're posting every time after you do your update. Just post in here the overview and a description. And then within the player channels, it can vary by the game and how it needs to be organized, but usually what I do is so each team or group within a team has their own category, and the team will have a channel just for information that's specific to them. And again, this is something that they can't post into, so the permissions are set. So it's private. There, I'll show. So it's private, so only Blaustein and the spectators and umpires can see it. But then Blaustein can't send messages into it. They can see it but can't talk in it. So it keeps it clean, and it's just info that I want only them to see. Then I usually always have a channel to start off with where they can do planning that gets closed once they get started. Now, one thing about closing channels, I'm often lazy and I'll just write the word closed and expect players not to, or sometimes I don't even write the word closed, but I expect players to know not to type into it and hear it anymore. If they do start typing, I remind them and then close it. It just saves time. If you want to be more exact about it, you go in, you change the permissions, and so now you click on Blaustein, and instead of, I did the wrong one. But if they were able to send messages, I'd make it so that they can't. I guess I did in that case. That way they can't even talk if they wanted to and forgot. So, and that goes well for collocations, or the same for collocations. So I often have a separate category for all the collocations out there, and same idea. Whoever's collocated, you add them in there, and then once it's once they're no longer together, I close it out. Again, by usually saying the word close, but you can change the permissions. One thing that I do just to cut down on the number of channels is I continue collocations, which does lose a little bit of the fog of war, because let's say the blue CIC, he's meeting with his Force Corps commander, and then a couple turns later he's meeting with his Second Corps commander. I use the same channel for both, which technically the Second Corps commander wouldn't see everything that the First Corps commander had said. And so if you really wanted to be more realistic, you would just create a whole new channel and have it fresh. I choose not to do that usually because, one, I think it's actually helpful for the commanders to see what's been said and kind of get caught up to speed that way without having to talk about it. And then two, it just cuts down on the channel, so you don't have 100,000 channels in your server that you're having to keep track of. So that's what I do. Another thing you could do is handle it by threads, which I don't do too often for this, but I think you can. For example, let's say the blue CIC, you have a collocation channel, and then every time, let me move that out of the way, every time he meets with someone, you go create a thread, create new thread, give it a name, so CIC with First Corps or something like that, and then you make it private, and that way you got to type a message and then you ping the people that you want in it, and then so you could just ping the CIC and the First Corps, and then only they will see that thread unless someone else invites them to it. So that's another way you could handle it if you wanted to be more realistic. That's also something I've seen that could be done within a player's channel. So let's go to First Corps, for example. So one of the best practices that I do now is you've got the main channel for the player. So the umpire is going to post the time, the screenshot, and then an update of what's going on. And then the player should be posting their orders and any dispatches in that same channel. But now often it's more than one player in a channel because everyone has two ICs. And so the best practice for that is any side discussion should be handled in a thread. So you'll see this channel has a staff conversation thread. And so if you go here, you can see they're talking on the side, but it's not filling up the main channel. Because one thing, sometimes as an umpire and also as a player, you need to reference what was said in the previous update, or maybe what were the orders were 2 or 3 orders back. Maybe they ordered cavalry to do this wide flanking ride, and in their new orders they say something referencing the cavalry, and you're like, oh crap, what's that cavalry supposed to be doing? As an umpire, you gotta scroll up, and you're like, oh okay, the cavalry's supposed to be doing that. But if the players are having super long conversations in the channel, scrolling up to find those orders or previous screenshots is a super pain. So you want to, if there's a lot of side conversations going on, you want to have a thread for that. One other practice I've seen, I didn't do it here, but you could also specifically create threads for different things. So maybe there's a thread where players only put orders, or a thread just for all the dispatches. So you can really organize within a channel as much as you want to so that everything's clean and organized and in its spot. So I've seen that there's some games going on right now. They're that way. The Japan game, there's a channel for or a thread for espionage, a thread for orders, and a thread for dispatches, I think. Um, so that's another thing you can do. Another way to handle dispatches is you can give the players a shared channel and then have them use threads to write to each other on it. So it's less, because one of the pains as an umpire, you can use dispatch which sometimes is used in my games. But if you're not using dispatch which automates dispatches a little bit, as an umpire, you gotta copy the dispatch and then say, okay, this is going to First Corps, First Division Commander. So you got to find his channel, paste it in there. It's a little bit of a pain. Um, and so if you don't want to deal with that, you can outsource it to the players to do it by using threads. So you say shared channel, here's a thread. If you want to talk with each other, use that. And you can add cooldowns um, to add a time limit. So maybe a 6-hour cooldown, so they can only write every 6 hours, which kind of simulates, if you have 2-day turns, that might be, and each turn is a day, for example, then 6 hours of cooldown might represent, hours of the day not being able to respond to each other, is one way to do it. All right, let me check again, see if there's anyone raising their hand. Nope. Let me check on YouTube, sorry. If we have any. Medi saluted. Hi, Medi. Thanks for watching. It was a good lesson for you. Good. Glad you're enjoying it. Thank you. Oh, I see you raising your hand too. Let me see if I can promote you. Invite to speak. There we go. Okay, you should be able to accept that and speak. Hey, Medi.
Hey, hello, James, and I'm hearing myself in the background. Anyway, um, I'm new to Kriegsspiel, and absolutely, it's my passion. I love the game, and as a new player, I get involved in games that one I had to leave, unfortunately. I was excited about playing, but I had to leave because I had life events going on. But there was a lot of preparation I should have done beforehand that I didn't do, and I got caught in a position before I wouldn't have had to leave the game. And what I was asking is, like, during the game, so as a new like me, where can I go or who do I ask for help just for understanding basic principles without bugging the umpire all the time or other players?
Okay. It was kind of difficult to understand you. I think I got about 50% of that. Would you mind asking the question in the Coffee Kegs and Kriegsspiel channel? And then I'll answer it if you don't mind.
Let, let me just do it this way. When I need help as a player in a game, what is the proper way to reach out to somebody to get assistance?
Okay, so you said as a new player, if you need help and you don't want to bug the Umpire, how do you get help? Is that what you asked?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Um, so what kind of help are you referring to that you need?
Well, just in general, because I didn't even know where really to begin. Like I was asked to submit, SOP orders, which I did not understand what they were, and it was all my fault. I just wasn't knowledgeable enough, and I was too. But I wanted to know, like during the game, you just reached out directly to an umpire in voice, not voice, in their own personal email, or is there a place there that they should be going to put my question?
Okay. Still having trouble understanding, but I think so. One, if you're having trouble knowing what to do, of course you can ask in the main Kriegsspiel Society server. Everyone's always willing to help answer questions there. and I don't. If it's game specific, you shouldn't hesitate to ask the umpire. You can ask them in your channel, or even create a thread to ask them if you have a bunch of side questions. I've done that before. Um, or ask other people. If it's not specific to your situation, you can ask within the game, um, server in general discussion, for example, like if it's about navigating or just general knowledge that people would know. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. It did. I'm sorry. They say I should turn down the background. But anyway, yes, it did. I just want to know where a person could get assistance during a game, and you answered it. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're
I'll
welcome.
probably have more questions.
No worries. All right. So let's talk about. So all most of what I said applied for play-by-post games. Let's talk about live games, best practices. Um, so the live games will be similar. The main difference is you got to have voice channels. So this is my live game server. Again, I've got the same general types of channels that that you would have in a play-by-post, but I've also got you got to deal with the voice channel. So um, let's see what are some best practices. For me, I almost always only have two teams in my live game, so I got a category for each team. And I keep the voice channels and the text channels in the same thing, and that way, if I only have to meet with one team in the game, I can just minimize that one category and focus on the other one. Um, let's see. Besides that, I'm not sure what other best practices there are there. So in that case, with a live game, it's like play by post but faster. And rather than using text to get orders, you're usually getting it verbally. Um, and so I'm trying to think what else there would be. One thing that I've found in some games, it's helpful to share your screen rather than give a screenshot. With a play-by-post, you have to do a screenshot, but with live, you have the advantage that you can share your screen. And so, especially in games where like you have 3D miniatures, like let me see if I can find there. Here's an example. Um, so, in this Ancients battle that we had, you can hit P while you can hit P while in TTS to change your point of view from third person to first person to top down. And if you go into first person, it makes it easy to scroll around from a certain point. And so rather than having to take 4 different screenshots in 4 different directions, you can just share your screen with the person, hit P, and then give them a 360 view while you describe what's going on. And that's a whole lot faster than basically doing 4 screenshots. So that's a best practice for live games. Um, Other than that, I can't think of anything else that live games. Most of my ideas were for play by post. So going back for play by post, just as a summary, um, at a high level, the best practices are you want to be as organized as possible as an umpire. You want a channel for every different kind of use and topic. That way, for players, it's easy to know where they need to go to get information. You want to make sure that those channels are blocked by permissions so people don't accidentally write into them and fill them with stuff that doesn't need to be there. You take advantage of roles. That way, it's easy to assign people to channels. It saves a lot of time that way. Um, yeah, and that's about it. Discord really makes running Kriegsspiel a lot of so much easier, especially for our group, which does it internationally, and you got people all over the world in different time zones. It's as far as I can tell, it's the best way to do it. It's an easy platform to use. I'm gonna check to see what questions are still out there, if any. Anyone else want to raise their hand and talk? Check YouTube. Nope. If there are none, I appreciate you guys for listening in. Hopefully you enjoyed it. and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.